What is up? I'm Miguel Antonio, and this is the Live and Create podcast. It's where I interview artists and entrepreneurs about what it means to live a great life and create great things. On today's episode, we have Ben Wendt. Ben wears a whole bunch of different hats. He is co-owner of one of my favorite venues in Kansas City called the Rino, and he also is the production manager there. He also hosts a podcast called Ope Radio, which drops weekly, where he highlights Kansas City and regional bands from the area. And on top of that, he is the front man for the band The Way, Way Back. Now, in this episode, Ben shares with us the heartbreaking story of losing his son, Ezra, just shortly after he was born, and how that moment propelled him into some very, very dark days. And he also breaks down how it was community and the willingness to make his mental health a priority, which helped him climb out of those dark days. And though we deal with a ton of heavy topics in this episode, Ben also brings a whole lot of laughter, his heart to make other people feel good, feel happy, and to bring joy to them just shines through. It's a great episode. You're going to enjoy it.
The Live and Create podcast.
You are doing a bunch of things. You're doing all sorts of great things here in Kansas City. You got the podcast Ope, which I wasn't aware of that until we were in New York City one time on tour. And then Ben Byard, our old bass player, was like, you realize you say this like all the time. We all do. And then the rest of the tour, I was like, like the whole time. I'm like, I'm so Midwest. I wanted to pretend I was like cooler than just the Midwest. And I realized like, no, I'm embracing it because that's who I am. I grew up here. And then you have the Wayback Band, right?
Yeah, the way back.
Way back.
Yeah.
Another way.
You didn't go far enough.
I did not go far enough.
Yeah, man, we're getting old. It's way back. Yeah, way back.
And finally starting to book shows again at the Rhino. So
finally, man.
Right?
Yeah.
Feeling good about that?
Yeah, dude, it feels really good to, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but just like to see some light coming through at the end of the tunnel, like that just feels fantastic. I've got both my Fauci's, both my parents are vaccinated. My wife just got vaccinated. The numbers have been steadily declining for like, honestly, it's like 6 straight weeks, I'm pretty sure now. And the numbers specifically in Kansas City have been very good for about 2 full months, basically since that Christmas bump bounced. And then, I think we're just slowly but surely going to just tread towards normal. And, we're starting to talk to bands about ticketed, assigned seat, spread out. We've done a couple trials actually last night. I've got a fun thing that I'll talk about in a little bit, but like we had a kind of a test run for some comedy and had about 15 to 20 people in there. And I think it felt very spread out and safe. And we're headed towards a degree of normalcy, which is great because we haven't even had a freaking shred of it for the last year. So
right.
I think it's one of those things where like we're so deprived that even something that kind of tastes like normalcy or looks like normalcy, even if it's not the full uncut real thing, I think we'll take half calf, like
absolutely.
Sure,
when you haven't had coffee forever, like you'd take half calf right now because your cup was empty.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. After spilling an entire cup of coffee on my laptop, I would take, I wish I had an intern right now.
You're like, fill it up. One step at a time. That'll be next year, right? But man, yeah, I feel you. It feels like the gears. I think I've described it in the podcast maybe way too many times in different interviews. It feels like the gears are starting to slowly move. It's like you can hear everything firing up. It's almost like being in an office building where the lights start coming on. You can hear the power clicking in and it's exciting. It's very, very exciting. And there's folks like you who have been fighting for, the whole time to try to figure out how can you keep these venues alive? How can you fight for artists during it? Zach Henderson was one of the interviews I did a while back, and he got to tell the story of shifting from the Rhino or from Colony, and all the shifts you guys have been making just to try to help it stay alive. Now, one thing you are very clearly passionate about artists and about specifically Kansas City artists, Midwest in general, but like the Kansas City area, I guess you would say. And because I want to get into so many different things, but I'd love to start with, where does that passion come from for you? Because it seems to be it almost seems to be like you breathe it.
Yeah, so I think it doesn't hurt that I'm Kansas City born and raised. Other than in college, I went to school in Warrensburg, which is like an hour away, and kind of a suitcase school. Almost all my friends and people would come home either to St. Louis or Kansas City on the weekends anyway. And I was in bands and stuff, and there really wasn't a lot of great stage time in Warrensburg. There might be now, I'm not sure. So I came home almost every weekend anyway. So really my entire life I've lived in Kansas City. And so, this is my home in every possible way. And then I think it really comes from a mixture of my just genuine love of music, and then the fact that I'm a very family centric, friend centric person. Like I'm definitely a Hufflepuff if I go to Hogwarts, and I'm just drawn to people. I've never met a stranger. When I die, I want as many friends to have made as many friends as possible. And I love people. I love humans. I'm an optimist, and I know humans can do horrible, awful things, but most of the people I meet tend to be really wonderful. And so I think it's this weird blend of I just happen to just be very, very passionate about music. And then I'm also innately passionate about my friends and pleasant acquaintances and whatever it is they do. So I tend to find myself drawn towards a lot of musicians. And I just very much, I've always had a mentality of a rising tide lifts all boats. And I've never really understood when artists want to compete with each other and fight with each other. I've always just seen, I don't know, like if you're on a bill with two other bands, I remember being younger, and, I've been in bands for over half my life now in the scene. And I remember being younger and bands fighting about who gets to go last, who's the headliner, who's that. And I was like, I always thought what mattered more is like, can we all make sure that we bring at least 30 people? Because if all four bands bring 30 people, then 120 people are going to be here.
Right. Focus on the right thing.
Yeah. So I don't know. I would definitely say that a lot of that has to do again with the fact that I am just very family and friend oriented, and then I happen to also just love music. So those two things kind of, I think, organically add up to my passion.
Right. And it seems like, I saw you, I think we first met when you started booking at the Rhino.
I think the first time I met you was at Czar Bar with the UKs, who at the time were the Uncountable Kings.
No shit.
And my band Crystal Baller, and your band Run With It. I'm almost positive.
Damn.
I think it's the very first time we met. And then we probably
had to go way back, if you will.
We had to go way back.
Yeah.
That's
Two dads are gonna be a lot of dad jokes. That's
no, absolutely. The only reason there won't be more is because I again dumped my entire cup of coffee on my keyboard. So as we know, caffeine is also dad joke juice. So.
That's awesome. Well, that's cool, man. I feel bad. I like vaguely remember that show. I remember that's where Noah and I first started becoming friends during that time.
Yeah.
I love what he's done, what the UK's were doing, and all that. But man, you then grew it in doing the open mic nights, and which I think it was beautiful to see. I got to see a few different ones, and beautiful to see just different artists, some who are just starting out, some who have been playing. And seeing a place for people to develop and grow. Where does the idea of helping people develop their craft come from?
Yeah. So I always think back to the people who helped me and who were there for me when I was young and getting started in local music. And I mean, I was in bands in 7th and 8th grade. I mean, I was in bands and getting a little bit of stage time here and there from people who shouldn't probably have been even giving me stage time and good advice from recording, because I was a child, and they shouldn't have been wasting their time with me and my skate punk band. But I think, when I heard that the Rhino was opening, I was friends with Zach and Drew, and just I literally said, like, I'll quit my job tomorrow if you put me in charge of it. My dream has always been to own and run a music venue, because I've always wanted to create the kind of music venue that I would want to play at. I think because I have so much experience on both sides of the microphone, I know what it feels like when you walk into a venue to perform. I know what it feels like when the sound guy's snarky at you. I also know what it's like when you're the sound guy and the lead guitarist won't turn his damn amp down, and
he's
so
like, sure. And he just keeps cranking it up. You're like, what the
right. And I've experienced all of it from every angle. And so I think I kind of speak both languages, you know, and so I always, my goal is to always make sure it's just like a great experience for everyone from every possible vantage point, and stuff like Song Lab or open mic and things like that. I just always kind of asked myself, like, why do open mics have a reputation of not being good? Like, is there actually a reason, or is it just that people are lazy and throw a microphone on stage? And it's like, could you invest 30% more care and make the product 80% better? And then wouldn't that beget better talent? And then suddenly isn't the product 150% better? And
Boom.
then isn't that going to beget more talent? And then isn't that going to make the product 300% better, all because you put 30% more effort into it? And
I like this math. I want that kind of math.
yeah, you know, and I wish I were an actual mathematician, but that's,
Hey,
you know, my
I'm
approximation
a musician.
was
It
like,
works for me. I'm like, yeah, sounds reasonable.
I just need to count to 4 or occasionally 6.
One time I was
waltzy song.
One time I was in a group of all musicians. We were all standing there, and someone came up and asked, like, "Hey, real quick, I forget what they were working on, but they literally asked us this math equation, and we all just stared at them." And finally, we all realized we were all just waiting for someone else to like answer it, because we're like, we don't even want to do on this.
Yeah. But how many musicians does it take to unscrew a light bulb? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Nice. See, you got the dad jokes. They're coming in.
I just, in my head, that made sense, but I don't know if that's.
But so again, your goal is to, if I can put the energy in to these artists,
like,
we can see
if I show up,
bigger response.
If I show up 30 minutes earlier and make sure that like the seating is comfortable, and make sure that like, if I make sure that all of the DI boxes are on stage and ready to go, so it runs just a little tighter, if I make sure that we're using halfway decent microphones, if I share some of my gear so that, like, you know, like what I have found a lot of the time will happen is like, we'll have like a really talented friend who's up there, like Jake Wells or Paige Turner. And then they'll say, oh, well, I would play, but I don't have my guitar. And I'm like, good, I have my guitar, get on the stage, you know? And like,
I think you gave me a capo the night I play.
I'm sure. Yeah. I've shared many a capo. And so that's my thing, you know, take away the barriers to entry. And then if you, again, like, I think that if you build it, and if it has a reputation of, no, this is quality stage time, no, there's actually an audience here, no, they're actual, you know, like, I think that just will beget more of itself. It will just build onto itself. And again, like, it all starts by putting just a little more effort. And I don't think it actually ever ends up taking more than that initial push. But yeah,
that's awesome, man. And one thing, again, I've only been there a few times, but the thing that really stuck out to me is that it seemed like that family vibe, where you said the family and friends are so important to you. I think that part of your personality has bled over into the culture that you're creating there. And it was really inspiring. And it reminded me, I think there's a place, I think it's called the Velour out in Provo. If I don't know if I'm getting the place right, the name right, but it's like where Imagine Dragons got their start and everything, and they do open mics. And I had an opportunity, I was like touring through and had an opportunity to jump in. And that was the vibe that they had created. They spent years creating this supportive vibe where, like, I felt like I made a ton of friends that night. And I feel like that is what you are building and creating. And it's amazing to think about what the extra 30% you're putting into it. What that will mean even 5 years down the road, what artists will come out of that, who will grow. And, you know, obviously the relationships, but even the success that I think some of those artists who may be afraid to even get up in front of people for the first time, maybe one day those people will be playing Sprint Center. And that's an inspiring thought. And I think you're creating a culture that looks like that. And that's really cool.
Definitely trying. And, you know, I mean, like, it's cool how many bands have actually formed out of this, where you've got people who come and it's like, hey, actually, I know I played guitar tonight, but I'm a drummer and I'm looking to start a band. If you're interested, come talk to me. I'll buy you a beer. And then like two or three bands that tour around, like not tour around, but gig around the city have come out of it. And a lot of friends. And then what I also notice is that when I book the regulars for like actual shows, the audiences are bigger, because a lot of the people who come see them at open mic night and also play the open mic night come out to support that too, you know. I mean, so it's like, I think that there are some, in addition to it just being like a very nice family community and all of that, there's also some really great professional, you know, rewards. There's some extrinsic rewards affiliated with it, which is like, because you're coming to this mic night where there's pretty decent stage time and a lot of time a bit of a crowd, now all of a sudden you've got more people coming to your actual paid gigs and things like that. And
Absolutely.
I mean, that's obviously a win-win situation.
Yeah, because I'm sure you've had those nights where you walk out and there's like 5 people on stage, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, it's
damn.
that's tough stuff. I have been very blessed. I haven't had a gig like that in a minute, and I feel very very lucky. But I think that's also, I mean, like you're big into this, I over as I get older, I become really, really particular with which gigs I book for myself and how I promote. And, I think when I was younger, it was like, let's just get out there. Let's play 24 times a year. Let's play 30 times a year. And then it's like, okay, well, your friends are only going to come see you so many times. So like, who's coming? Like, can you write down a piece of paper who's coming to see you, and if that number is just, if that's a depressingly short list, then, don't take the gig unless you really want to, it's not all about playing for people. But at this point in my advanced age, I tend to say, yeah, if there aren't at least 30 or 40 people there, then it ends up bumming me out more than it fills me. Although actually I haven't had stage time in so long that maybe now playing,
you're like, I don't care, just put me up there, plug me in.
Again,
let's do this.
Going back to that diluted version of the real thing. Maybe at this point I actually would be fine with playing to 2 or 3 people. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, and with that idea, the diluted version, the world's slowly coming back online. As I've been reflecting this last year, because all of our worlds got turned upside down, obviously.
Sure.
There's key lessons that I've learned personally that I'm trying to, because I'm getting so excited, I just want to hit the ground running. But I realize there's things I learned over the year that I want to make sure I build in those lessons and not forget them, because I think they're unique to having a lot of time on my hands. I'm wondering for you, are there any lessons over this last year that you want to hold on to? You want to make sure that as the world comes back, you don't let go.
Definitely. So, I mean, the big one for me is just that, it's just that work for the sake of work is even less valuable than I thought it was. And that I don't think I will, I'm very privileged to be able to say this. But like my wife is a teacher and, teachers don't make like a lot of money, but they make consistent money. Right. And so like, it's us and my 2 daughters, relatively small family. Like, I think that I don't ever plan to take another job ever again that doesn't just feel like truly life fulfilling. Like we're going to be able to get by and pay the bills and live in our house, and make rent. And we might not clear much more than that, but I am realizing that seeing my family and spending time with my family, not that I ever doubted this, but I think it's even more valuable than I thought it was. And it's even more important than I thought it was.
Right.
And then on top of that, when I am doing work, I already mostly was in this wheelhouse, but I'm really going to double down on it. I don't really plan to ever work again unless it's generating light and hope and fun for other people. I don't really ever plan on working another shift in my life that isn't in some way causing other people to have a better day. I just don't really have any interest in that. And I already had I think compared to most people, a very diminished interest in it. But anything that was left of that over this past year is dead now. It's just gone.
Was it because you saw that, hey, we were able to survive even though the world shut down? Or was it something else that
big part of it? The other part of it is that the last year before was a mad dash, me really trying to advance my, if you will, career in a lot of ways. I was working about basically 40 hours a week at Boulevard in my leadership role there at the rec deck. And I have zero hard feelings towards Boulevard. I had a good experience there, but I was let go in the summer because they had to downsize quite a bit, and it ended up being a real blessing in disguise for me. I think because I was doing that, and I was also still the production manager of the Rino, so I was still working at the Rino on site at least once, usually twice a week. And then also frequently, making sure that stopping by to make sure bands were loading in okay, stopping by to make sure that, oh, hey, there's something weird's going on with the soundboard. What's going on? You know? And so, I mean, like, I really was in every possible way working 7 days a week and spending a lot of time away from my family. And, you know, a lot of the hustle I poured in that year has directly led to some really great things, but actually most of it didn't. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a, I think we have to stop like totally fetishizing like blind hustle, and we need to reprioritize into concentrated, focused hustle, like making sure that you're devoting your energy to, like, it needs to be like, I play a lot of video games, and I think of like in role-playing games there's skill trees, and it's like, if you want to get to the point of magic missile, then I'm really cool, I don't know if you know this about me, Miguel, and then like well, first you have to like do like the cantrips magic, and then you have to do like arcane blast, and then you like if you're not in the right skill tree, you're not going to get there. And so if you can't just be sinking time and energy into something that's not going to directly lead to what you want it to, because even if you are, it's still going to take a lot of you, and it's going to take a lot of time, and it might not pay off exactly how you want, but you need to like really stop and go, is this adding up how we want it to? You know, like I think back to my bands in high school, and there was a minute there where I was in a band that was getting quite a bit of popularity. We were pop punk, which was the right genre at the right time. We were all about to graduate from high school. And I mean, we could pretty consistently, if we played like in the Northland, we could consistently pull like over 100, sometimes even 200 or 300 people. Like we got a really big pull there for about a summer. And we became really obsessed with this idea of releasing our next record. And we, for whatever reason, decided it needed to be a full-length album. It needed to be 12 songs.
I remember those conversations in my own band.
So much time and money into it, and it never even really truly got finished. And looking back, we would have been so much better off doing a couple of singles and, you know, doing like a little regional tour. And there's so many other ways we could have devoted the time and energy, but we decided we want to do a full-length record. And when I look back on it, the reason we really wanted to is because we wanted to get signed to a label. Well, you do the other stuff so you get signed to a label, so the label pays for the full-length record. I mean, like, we just weren't, so we sunk so much heartache and time and money into that and just did it the wrong way, you know? And so that's a roundabout way of saying that, like, this past year, I kind of stopped and thought about the ways I was just expelling energy rather than actually, you know, putting it on a track that I wanted to be on. And I am really grateful. I know, again, I'm speaking from a place of real privilege, so because so many people have lost so many family members and friends. And I lost a friend, not necessarily directly to COVID, but I think a death of loneliness that was definitely a byproduct of COVID. And I'm fortunate that he's the only person I've lost, but I feel blessed in my little corner of the world to say that I got to see my daughters so much more than I did last year. And I got to see my wife so much more than I did last year. And it was exhausting and depressing. And I gained 15 pounds from stress eating and drinking.
Hey, the COVID weight was legit. I got up to like 230 and I was like, gosh, shit, I didn't start working out again.
Yeah. But, you know, I think I think I am really grateful for the way that it caused me to stop and go like, hey, you were expelling a lot of energy that wasn't leading you towards the places that you want to go. And it was also causing you to see your family less. And that equation stopped making sense. The solving for X no longer really was relevant.
Back to math, man. Dude, I'm
mathy today for some reason, which is because I'm not a math person. Oh my gosh, there was in high school, I was I was dating this just absolutely wonderful human being, and first semester she's so brilliant, and I'm terrible at math, and she like was kind enough to tutor me, and first semester of algebra 2, I had an A-, and then we broke up over Christmas break, and I skated by with a D+ at the second semester.
You're like,
like, what I can solve for X. What changed? Yeah.
But dude, that's such a powerful lesson, man. This idea of what your inputs are and what your outputs are. It's funny because I laughed so hard when you said the full length thing with Run With It. I really wanted a full length album. I wanted like this big thing. And the producer we were working with was like, maybe you should not do that. And maybe you should do like 2 or 3 songs really, really well because of the money you have. And I was like, no, we are doing this for the budget we got. And he's like, okay. And so we did it. And it didn't really amount to a whole lot. And then it came time to record again. And I called him up. He goes, so do you want to listen to me this time? And I was like, yeah. So we ended up doing our EP. And it was funny because that EP and really one song in particular off of it was the one that helped catapult us to touring all over the place and doing the things. And I learned such a powerful lesson there where sometimes less is more until you have the time and budget and the people who can dive in. There's a book. It's 80-20 principle. Are you familiar with that? I'm
no, tell me about it. I like
so
things.
It's hitting. It's by a guy named Richard Koch or Koch. I don't know how you say it, but basically he breaks down. I believe it's
Cock on this podcast?
We can say Koch. I think it's Koch. Richard Koch. One of those. How many times can I say Koch on the podcast?
Sorry, I'm 12. I'm 12 years old.
Dude, I'm total middle schooler. I have 4 boys. Our oldest is 16, and he started saying "that's what she said" jokes on our last vacation, and all I could do is like try so hard not to laugh, and I'm damn near in tears driving when my wife's just staring at me like, are you really laughing at that? I was like, it was really funny. But yeah, so 80-20 principle, he breaks down, I believe it's called the Pareto principle, where he started recognizing, like in agriculture, it was basically 20% of the crops were yielding 80% of the return. And so they began to apply the same principle in economics, and they're seeing it go across the board that typically 20% of the things that we do actually yield 80% of the results. And so the book, I'm actually reading through it right now. That's why hearing you talk about this, it was so refreshing, because as I'm moving into this next phase, these next steps, I'm trying to wrestle with like even, for example, with the podcast, I know the goals I have in other areas, and I realized I was spending sometimes 15, 20 hours a week, but then had to, roll back and ask myself, is it bringing me joy? Is it accomplishing, is it just getting me a 10% more bump? Where is that 10% even worth it? And how do I scale back the time I put in, but leverage what it is better? And man, that is such a huge principle. And that's cool that COVID brought that to you in a way. So even COVID brought a lot of shitty things.
Check that out, and it rings true for sure. I mean, I do believe, there, like, it's just odd how often we see in the universe like standard deviation proving to just kind of be true across almost all fields and things like that. Like, the idea that an 80-20 principle would tend to be true amongst all fields. And it is interesting how all that ends up kind of averaging out. It's very fascinating. But yeah, I definitely hear truth in that big time.
Absolutely.
You have to. But then I think what's interesting when you're talking about art specifically is then well, okay, but you can't just pick and choose which 20% it is, right? You still got to write enough songs that 20% of your songs are yielding 80% of your streams, or
well, it's interesting,
whatever your metric of success is. Yeah.
And that's part of the process, even for me, as I've been chewing on it, because and really he dives into it in the book too, is what's the 20% you can pour then more into? And that's what I had to start asking myself. What's all the bullshit that I keep putting in my schedule because I like being busy, but busyness sometimes is so unproductive, as I've seen in my own, and then I burn out, and then that's super unproductive.
100%.
And so
it's similar to you there.
It's like, how do you cut out all the bullshit as much as possible or minimize it so that then, because that's the thing is writing, I keep finding that keeps getting on the back burner when, as you say, it's so true. You have to dive in, and you have to keep diving in every single day. How do you do that if all the bullshit's in the way? And actually, I'm so sorry to do this. I gotta go to the bathroom real quick. I'll take a quick break.
Let's take a little pee break. That's fine.
Too much coffee.
That's fine.
I'm rubbing it in your face. I got coffee.
Yeah,
you
bragger. You bragger. No.
Man, I'm sorry for that.
Dude, you're absolutely fine.
We are back. We are back rolling. One time when I first started
we back.
When I first started the podcast, I would use a lapel mic, and I had
Oh,
to take a
wow.
bathroom break, and I forgot that the lapel mic was on. Luckily, it wasn't tied into the Zoom.
Dude.
But when I went back to edit, I was like, great, there's like a minute of me peeing, and this
Uh,
is
I
amazing.
so I did a lot of musical theater, or just theater in general, in high school and college. And one time I was in a production of Beauty and the Beast, and this is the best. So right after the number Gaston, no one, I won't sing too much because the Disney Corporation will come at your podcast. We can't pay those rights. But they sang the song, they get off, and Gaston and LeFou, who were best friends in real life, as well as they were in the play, they went off stage and they went into the restroom, and both lapel mics were still on. And so they start peeing as
That's
like
amazing.
Belle is trying to do the next scene. And like, it's high school theater. So like people, like whoever was the sound person didn't get to the board fast enough. And they were like, hey, we just like effing killed it, right? Yeah. And then like you hear them flush and everyone's just like, oh my gosh. And it was, I think it was the, like maybe opening night. Like there was an audience and it was like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's amazing. It reminds me of AJR, their 100 Bad Days. Do you know that song? 100 bad days made 100 good stories. It's like that stuff in the moment, you're so embarrassed, but it's like, that's the shit. Like you're having drinks with your friends. Like one time that, that's
I'm telling
amazing.
this story that happened to two people that weren't me, 14.
Yeah, probably
ago.
easier
Like,
for you to tell it than they,
That's true, I guess, right? I've got no skin in the game.
Now, one thing I've seen online is you are an advocate for mental health and for wellness.
Big time.
And I was wondering, was there a moment for you, or has it been that shifted you to want to talk about those things, or has it been a growing thing for you?
So it's, again, I think like a lot of my psychology is very predictable. I have just like this great family. We're very close, we're very sitcom-y. My like two of my best friends in the whole world are my brothers. Two of my other best friends are my parents. My mom is a shrink. She's been a therapist my whole life, and my dad is he was a psychology and history teacher and retired. He still is a tennis and a basketball coach. But so because of the psychology, there was always a lot of discussion of mental health and feelings and making sure that you talk through things in our life, and that was always highly prioritized. And I think looking back, I've probably battled anxiety my entire life. And when I say battling anxiety, I mean, like, I have general anxiety disorder. And like, I remember being 4 and not being able to sleep because I was thinking about the fact that I was inevitably going to die someday and what that meant. And, I think probably in retrospect should have been in therapy sooner. Probably should have been on some kind of medication sooner. But when I graduated from high school, and it was the very first time in my life, I've lived a very, very privileged suburban life. My family was never rich, but I've never needed anything ever. And have had, especially the first good chunk of my life, very, very few traumas and just very blessed life. But when I graduated high school, I suddenly started to really battle very serious depression for the first time because I felt unsure of my future. I felt like I had to go to college because my parents had made it really clear that for the first time ever, really, that they would be disappointed in me if I didn't. I don't think my parents would have cared at all if I was gay or trans or anything like that. But like,
you better go to college.
They would have been very.
You don't care who you bring home, but
and exactly, I think truly. I actually think at one point in time there might have literally been a comment very, very close to that. And so there was just a lot of pressure, and I really didn't know what I wanted to major in because I think a lot of the things I'm passionate about, I knew a college degree wouldn't yield financial rewards. And spoilers, I was right that majoring in creative writing or music or theater doesn't actually all it really leads to is a lot of debt.
Yep.
And I was just very depressed about my future, and that became a trend that just never went away. Something kind of unlocked in my brain at that point in time, and then I began really, in addition to my anxiety, battling depression. I think it's an experience a lot of people have where one begets more of the other. You don't do something because you're anxious, and then you miss it, and then you're depressed about it. And then because you feel bad, you're less likely to get off. Yeah, and it really is a, Ouroboros, is that what it is? A snake eating its own tail. I think that's what it is. I'm not great at Latin or math. And, so that was always something I was, I would attempt to write about in my music and things like that. And then in 2014, my wife and we got married in 2013, accidentally, excitedly, made a honeymoon baby. And she's Catholic, so it all worked out good, I guess. That was the plan, right? But yeah, we gave birth to my son Ezra, and he ended up dying when he was 3 days old of a very rare metabolic condition called MCAD. And it turns out basically that Sarah and I are both carriers, and that any offspring that we make has a 1 in 4 chance of having it. And it's not, what's really frustrating, and I mean, I won't even get into the weeds on this because it's just heavy and a hard place to go when you're thinking, but like, it's actually very treatable. If you know that you have it, you just need to make sure the baby eats regularly, and by the time that the baby's about 1 or 2, their body will handle stuff well enough that it becomes more like diabetes. You just kind of have to manage blood sugars and things like that. But when the body's that small, you really have to stay on top of it. And unfortunately, the screenings for the condition just didn't come back in time, and he passed. And obviously that was devastating in a whole bunch of different ways, and I'll spare details, but I ended up developing post-traumatic stress disorder from that. And it took a minute to recognize that I had it. I think actually funny is not the right word, but oddly enough, I think that TV shows and movies were what made me realize I had it. I suddenly kept thinking about Jeremy Renner in The Hurt Locker, and that scene where he's in the grocery aisle staring at all the cereal. And I felt like that all the time. Wow. And I started to have some pretty bad flashbacks, and I guess what you would say kind of teeter on hallucination. I had just kind of endless hypervigilance, and a car would drive by, and I would scream what was that, and finally was you know what, I think I might actually have PTSD, and had to, so yeah, I went and started seeing a therapist once a week, seeing a psychiatrist once every 2 or 3 weeks initially, and then over time less and less. I still see my therapist once a month, and then check in with my psychiatrist regularly. But the big thing for me why I feel the need to advocate for it, I guess, is twofold. I think the first is that like I said, it took me a minute to even realize I had it, and I felt lucky to have the vocabulary established in movies and TV of what PTSD is like, and how it's visually portrayed and represented. I felt fortunate to have that, and kind of felt well, I don't ever want, if I could ever help somebody else realize they have it, or depression or anxiety or any kind of neuroatypicality, that I want to help with that. And then the second was that my journey of therapy is of course always going to be very hard for any kind of trauma or loss, PTSD aside, losing a child, my wife doesn't have PTSD, and of course had to go to therapy and process it her way, as well. But right. For me, it was specifically the medication side of it that was such a journey that I feel the need to be very vocal about, because I wasn't here for about 2 years. I was on just a revolving door of medications. And I mean, we tried everything. We tried SSRIs, we tried I was on lithium for a while. I mean, we tried mood stabilizers, all sorts of stuff. And the way it would interact with my diet, I mean, a whole separate thing is that there was one summer where I was on some mood stabilizers where the main side effect was weight gain. I gained 30 pounds in 3 months that I've still to this day really struggled to shed. Yeah. And I mean, it was a grueling, the fact that my wife, was there at my side, and being, my best friend and a companion throughout all of it, my parents and my brothers, I always will now feel like I am living on borrowed time, that I made it through there, because I would say for about 2 years straight, I was just not here. I was suicidal pretty much every single day. I didn't want to live anymore. In the middle of that, not to be, I don't know. This is sorry.
You're
can
fine.
we have like a fun discussion at the other half of this?
Absolutely. No, this
so
is
but this is what's
stuff,
important,
though.
right? This is what's important, right? The sad clown. This is a real thing, you know, like Robin Williams, like took his own life. And when that happened, I wept, not because Robin Williams died, but because I was like,
you relate.
I get it, you know?
Chester Bennington was the one because I've dealt with depression and OCD throughout my life. And when he killed himself, I was like, fuck, it was literally his albums that got me through some of the darkest periods of my life. And he didn't.
Right.
And
right.
So I feel
because you have to get to that place. You have to dig like you don't get one without the other. You just don't. The fact that everybody stuck with me long enough to find the right medications, to find the ones that make me feel like me, but like the better version of me, the happier, clearer version of me. And happiness, I don't mean that to be flip, because of course it's fine to feel sad. Of course it's fine to mourn,
right.
But I was mourning all the time. Like you can look at the sun and notice that the sun is beautiful. You can't stare at it or you're going to literally go blind. You can glance at it and go, wow, the sky is beautiful, but you can't just stare at it, you know? And I think that when you're really grieving, my band, the way back, we have this song called Bad Star that's very, very personal to me. And it's very much a song that I wrote to past me. The idea is that it's future me talking to past me, saying that, this is what got me through and you have to hold on. And what I tried to be very genuine with the lyrics, because I think songs that talk about depression a lot of the time and suicidal thoughts are very like, hang in there, bud, because it's great on the other side. And when you're at the bottom of the well, you don't want to hear that. No, so instead, the lyrics are, you are not wrong. Things could not get any worse. This is actually rock bottom. You're right. You're not wrong. This is as shitty. Sorry, we can cuss, right? No,
yes,
I don't
absolutely.
know. This is as shitty as it's ever going to be. You're right. And you don't deserve this, but you have to hang on and not lose track of who you are, because someday it's going to hurt less bad and you're going to be glad that you did. And I heard this metaphor the other day that really blew my mind. It's so simple. But it blew my mind. And the idea is that when you lose someone, that your grief is a box, and you're carrying this box, and in the box on the bottom is a button, and inside of the box is also a ball. And anytime the ball touches the button, your heart hurts. And when you first lose someone, the ball is so big, it's the size of the box, and it never stops touching that button. And then slowly but surely, the ball deflates and gets smaller, and it touches the button just a little bit less. But you can just, your whole life, the box will never go away.
Right.
The button will never go away. The ball will never totally go away, but it's going to get smaller and smaller, and you will find fewer and fewer moments where the ball shakes. And I just actually, let's see. Well, it's not totally relevant. I know this podcast will come out in a couple of weeks, but I personally just went through kind of the anniversaries of everything, because what's hard when you lose somebody who they're 3 days old, their birthday and the day they died are the same week, and so the first week of March is always very, very hard for me. And the birthday in particular is hard because I want to celebrate my son's life. I want to celebrate the fact that I got to meet my son and look at him in the eye and hold him. And, that I got to experience that, because I think this is what I started to say earlier, and then I interrupted myself. I think that's hard is that in addition to losing him, my wife and I, right after that, our next 2 pregnancies were miscarriages. And,
so it compounds it.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is I kind of try to be delicate when I talk about this part, is that people always mean well, right? People are trying to comfort you and they're trying to help you. And I have had a handful of times where people go like, I know how you feel, man. We actually had a miscarriage. And I'm like, well, we had a miscarriage too. And I'm here to tell you that losing the living son that you held and took home from the hospital hurts.
Well, reading your,
and it's not
reading your words on an anniversary of where you looked into his eyes and saw your own eyes, saw the eyes of your father. Like,
I got
just
that.
reading
and
that
here's
almost
the thing
break me down.
Yeah. Well, and then what's hard about it is the reason it hurts more is because I got more, and I don't ever want grief Olympics, and I don't ever mean to diminish anybody else's grief. And I'm here to say also that, like, who, if you know, if you've lost any of that, it hurts and it's horrible. But like you just said, that part, the beauty of it is what makes it hurt even worse. It causes both ends. The polarity of it is inevitable, you know, and so I always want to celebrate his life, and that I met him on his birthday. But all of this is to say that I just constantly feel like I'm living on borrowed time, because I was lucky enough to have people who love me and fought for me, and to have my wife and my parents and my brothers and my friends and my therapist and my psychiatrist who fought tooth and nail to keep me here. And not everybody has the set of privileges that I do. And if I can ever help even just make someone's day a little bit brighter, a little bit easier, if I can help someone who's fighting depression escape for 30 minutes because they're seeing live music that I'm helping produce, or anything like that, then I just feel truly called to that. I feel like I'm living on borrowed time. You're not supposed to watch your kid die. And then you're definitely not supposed to make it through 2 straight years of suicidal thoughts. And I did. And so now I feel like it is my duty to do whatever I can to help people who are fighting any kind of mental illness, who are neuroatypical, to you know, help them feel less alone, to give them peace, to listen to them if they need to vent, you know. And I feel truly called to it. It feels like I would be wasting my life, and the second chance that I was given, you know, I feel like Ebenezer Scrooge if after I've seen all 3 ghosts, he just went bah humbug. Yeah. You gotta have Christmas morning. You gotta go buy the biggest turkey or whatever he does. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's a powerful thing for you to be talking about it and pushing out there. I think our culture has shifted more and more. I know back when I was dealing with depression, OCD, and those things, like I hid it from every single person because no one was talking about it. I viewed it as this weakness. I didn't even know. It took years to battle through it, especially mainly because I was so quiet about it.
Sure.
But I think it's a powerful thing, a great thing that you're speaking about that. And I love that box analogy. And
it's crazy, right?
Yeah,
it's so simple, but I cried when I read it. I was like, oh no, that's too real.
Well, and it makes sense because I think people, when they're grieving, they want to, I've wanted to push through the grief and like get out on the other side. But the reality is what you said, like the box never goes away. Maybe the ball gets smaller. Like I remember I shared with you through text that I lost a sister, and I think it's when she was like 3 months old from SIDS. And obviously I think there's a difference, like knowing, like having kids of my own, like I can only imagine what it's like then to lose a child of your own. So it's not necessarily the same.
But same, I mean, I have siblings. It's the same to lose a sibling. Like grief, it always is going to be different. You know, that's what I mean when I say, like, I don't ever want the grief Olympics. I don't ever want that. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the thing where it was like into my 20s. And when I actually had a very similar journey where it was like college age, where the floor fell out from under me and all the anxiety. I was the kid. It's crazy to hear. I've yet to meet someone until now that was a little child worrying about dying. Like I was like, when I could write, I was writing out a will, putting it under my bed, who got my stuffed animals and shit like that, which was normal to me. But I found out that wasn't as normal for a lot of other people.
Yes.
And but that it came to a head in my college years, wrestling with all these things. And then I remember I went to visit my sister's grave, and now this is damn near 20 years after she passed away. And I had to pull over from the highway, just broke down crying. It was like I was grieving in yet a new way. But but like
and the button got pushed, and you can't help it.
Yeah. And I think that's the piece too of, for people grieving, it's like, that's always like, I still sometimes wonder what it'd be like to call my sister, who's supposed to be, you know, this old now, and supposed to be doing similar things. And losing a child, losing a sibling so young, it's like, it's all those dreams, it's all those expectations
it's
that are gone.
That's always is going to be the hardest, is the potential, the energy, you know, the inertia that's just gone. The thought that I always, this is a dark one, but I have had this thought, and I will someday, I will crack this, and I think make maybe my most important piece of art I've ever made. Not to sound pretentious, but because I need it for me. The thought of that my favorite people in the whole world are my daughters, and that the people who I know and love wouldn't be the same if my son were still alive. And that is like the most complicated, burns to touch it thought that I do want to distill into art someday, is this idea that like my daughter has oldest child energy, like birth order is real. I've watched it happen over and over again. She would be a different person who was the middle child, and I would never want her to change. And so there's some really complex thing in there that I'm gonna crystallize it someday, but it's right now it's still too hot to touch, but someday I'll write a song or a movie, or I don't know, make shadow puppets or something.
I wish I could remember the name. I'll try to name of this movie. I'll try to look it up and find it. I'll text you, but it's like a romantic comedy, but this guy discovers that him and all the men in his family can travel through time. And so as he goes,
this is very bizarre. It's called It's About Time.
Yes.
Right? Or About Time.
Yeah. With like the redheaded dude.
And this, who plays Hux in the new Star Wars trilogy. Domhnall Gleeson is his name.
Nice. So you know it. Okay, there you go.
I know it, but I haven't seen it. And this is what's so fascinating is I believe it's called Baader-Meinhof syndrome, when like something gets brought to your attention, and then like you're looking for a new car, and you decide I'm going to buy a red Honda Civic, and all of a sudden you see red Honda Civics everywhere. This movie has come up 6 or 7 times for me in the last month, so I have to watch it now.
Well, I think it dives into that topic. I won't say any more because you're already planning on watching it then to ruin it. But man, it dives deep into it to where it fucked me up thinking about it. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Okay, cool.
Well, diving into the last two. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. It sounded like you were about to say something.
Well, we can keep saying heavy, but I wanted to talk about something fun at some point. But you're the host. So
it's all good. Well, I think
I'm used to being the host.
No doubt.
I am the captain now.
Well, and that's what's fun when you get other like hosts or people who are like band leaders or something. It's like you get in the room, then you all just start grappling over what it is, because it's just built into us. So
it's why it's crazy that we got as many Beatles records as we did. You're like, how did Paul and John not kill each other?
Drugs.
Like, how did we get as many? Yeah, that's true. And specifically like drugs that chill you out.
Yes.
But yeah, like you look at, you're like, the fact that we got more than 3 Beatles records is insane.
Hallucinogenics, from what I understand, can take you through a journey of letting go, I think. But so last 2 questions, I think they can be very fun in a way, but this concept, this idea of live and create, I love the philosophical things that we dive into and that we've already gotten into. But if you had to define it right now, starting with the first question, what does it mean to you currently to live a great life?
Yeah, so for me, it's all about making sure that you're a net positive source of light. I think that there's this really beautiful lyric from a My Chemical Romance song called "The Kids from Yesterday" that I think if I were ever to get a song lyric tattooed, I don't know if I have that kind of energy, but if I were, I think I would get the quote, "You only live forever in the lights you make." And I think that it's really, really important to be a net positive on the world, and that currently I think we all have a lot of outlets to accidentally create more darkness than we recognize. I think that when we're on social media and things like that, there is this snarky shorthand and this quick reaction to, call someone an idiot and things like that, because you get to hide behind a screen a little bit. You're like, people are, and this is a good thing, but like, I'm a bartender and I watch, occasionally a bartender, one of my hats. What I see people have very nuanced, heavy conversations at bars that on social media would instead just turn into, well, you're an idiot, block, and or worse. And I wish that people would treat others online the way they would to each other's faces, because, and I don't mean that like in a, like, I don't mean that in like a Nickelback song, like, meet me up there, gonna treat me like a fresh, like, I just mean like truly like, like, would you be that mean to someone if you're in the same room as them and had to deal with the consequence of watching them cry? Then don't say it. And I think that we have a lot of ability to create light and dark on these platforms that we don't even think about. And to go on and to like there's a news article that's like this is happening, and then like, get a job, you bum, like that's not helping anyone, and so I think a good life is when you die, you can point to the fact that you made a lot more light than you made dark, and we're all going to make some dark, and it's going to happen, and it's an unavoidable. Nobody's perfect, but like, I think you should try to be the inverse of Hitler. Like try to positively impact as many lives before you go as Hitler did negatively. That's like the supreme life lived, is to just generate enough light. And I think really, really, like the gold medal, like you win life if you create people, and I don't mean having children necessarily, but if you can create a handful of people who you're going to leave behind that are going to generate more light because they knew you, and because how you taught them to make light. Because if you leave 4 or 5 people behind like that, and they leave 4 or 5 people, then the light over. I'm a big Star Wars fan, and the blue and the green lightsabers just have to take down the red. That's what you got to do.
I love that too. What did you say? The lyric, you only live forever in the lights you create.
You only live forever in the lights you make. Yeah.
And man, that's that right there. It's like, I just want to sit with that for a minute. That's powerful.
Oh yeah, I remember where I was the first time I heard that song. Like I kind of got distracted and didn't pay attention to the rest of the song.
You're like, all this is not happening because that
floored me. Yeah,
that's huge. I love it, man. Well, and then the last question: if you had to define creating great things right now in your life, how would you do it?
Wow. Well, I think a big thing is that right now sincerity is really underrated, and like I don't know, I think we're just so quick to be snarky and consider things saccharine and write off anything that's not edgy or biting, and and I love stuff like that, like I love Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is like teetering on nihilism, and I think for me personally, because I also think that a life well lived is where you generate light, I think it's probably making art. And, I use that very broadly. I mean, I think that could mean making somebody a really nice cocktail and serving it with a smile. It could mean writing a really good song. But I think that I think that could you rephrase the exact question? Because I want to answer it precisely.
Yeah, if you had to define
broadening its definition in my brain. Okay.
It's all right.
If I had to define it.
Yeah, how would you define creating a great life right now in your life? Or I'm sorry.
Wait, great life?
That was
art?
No.
Okay.
I messed it up. And I'm just gonna keep that in because hey, that's what I do.
Why not?
But how would you define creating great things?
Yeah, great things. Yeah. So I think a great thing is going to be something that causes people to think about the world in a different way, from a perspective of curiosity. I think, that could mean making a piece of art that makes people think about an experience that they hadn't considered before, a viewpoint that they hadn't thought before. But it could also just mean, wow, like again, using like a cocktail as a piece of art. Like, wow, that was so good. It makes me want to know what kind of rum was in that. What is that rum like? What does that rum taste like by itself? And a good piece of music is like that too. You hear the song, like, that was a great song. The guitar tone was exceptional. What kind of guitar is that guitarist playing? Oh, the guitarist is playing a Mexican Telecaster. What do those tend to sound like? So I think creating good art, creating good things is to create something that causes curiosity and follow-up questions that I think will, as a result, the inertia will carry on to the person who encountered it and then want to create new things themselves.
I love it, man. Curiosity. I would say that's the first time someone's defined it in the length of the podcast. And I love it. That's really cool, man.
Curiosity, killed the cat, helped the human. Yeah.
Well, let everyone know where they can find all that you're up to.
Yeah. So I want to plug this really exciting thing because I think this drops on St. Patrick's Day. Is that right?
This one?
This episode?
We're about 3 weeks out, 3.5 weeks out from episodes dropping from when it's recorded. So I don't know.
Do you know the date?
I don't know the date specifically.
Well, then maybe it's already happened. Oh, okay, that's fine. Maybe it already happened. Well, I'll plug something in the past. It probably still lives in some form, but I am in the midst of creating a really, really cool project that I want everyone to check out, even if it's already happened, because you'll still be able to engage with it in certain ways. But I was given one of the coolest jobs I've ever had in my entire life, which was booking 12 bands and 4 stand-up comedians for a week-long online music and comedy festival for the Pitch Podcast Network.
That's
called
awesome.
7 Days of St. Patrick. And I know that the videos are going to live online. I think on the Pitch website, they also, by the time this comes out, might be living on an app called Sound District, but they're going to be somewhere. You're going to be able to find them. But I got to work with so many incredible musicians, and seeing all that music was so cool. Working with Alex Garnett and Ben McBee and Jacob Roberts to make it all happen has just like truly been like one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. To go from no music at all over the last year to watching 10 bands in 2 days. I was so tired, but it was so great. So please check that out. I think you can get there surely somewhere on the Pitch website. The Pitch will have it. You can follow me on Twitter at @Shotzi. I deleted the app for my mental health, but I do check in periodically. And usually if I tweet, I'd say like gonna start a band called Emotional Roller Coaster Tycoon or things like that. And then what I would really, really like to plug the hell out of, I guess also you can listen to my band The Way Back if you like pop punk, or like if you ever went to Warped Tour, will probably be your cup of tea. We're a lot like Blink-182 meets New Found Glory, I guess. But the thing I'm so passionate about that I would just love it if I could get, if you listen to podcasts and you like listen, I mean, like a lot of the people who you interview have been featured on my podcast, and your music has been featured on my podcast. It's called OPE Radio, OPE ! Radio. As we said, up top, it's the OPE. Gonna sneak past you real quick, introduce you some new music, because that's what us Midwesterners say. We can't get it out. It's like how like people from New England say hot dog instead of hot dog. We say OPE. OPE Radio. It's on the Pitch Podcast Network. Every Monday I drop a new episode. I play 10 songs by 10 local artists. It's very eclectic. My goal is to provide context, because I think the hardest thing about finding new music is context. I think you're more likely to check out a band that your friend recommends to you, and you're more likely to check them out if you hear like they kind of sound like Jimmy Eat World meets Death Cab for Cutie, and you're like, I love Jimmy Eat World and Death Cab for Cutie. I want to listen to it. So I try to be that friend for you. I try to be your older brother who introduces you to cool new music that's all local. Nicole, thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks. It was awesome, man.
I really appreciate it. And sometime I'll have you on mine, and we'll talk detailed about your music and all of that. But I think it's really cool that you're having these conversations with people, and I love the angles that you come from. I'm truly a fan of the podcast, so it's been an honor to be on it, and I just love what you're doing, and so thank you on behalf of, I speak for all of the listeners, right, guys? Thanks for doing it.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I love what you're doing. It's inspiring, and I'll be adding all that in the notes, and then they can go to that. So it'll be awesome, man.
All of those 1,000 words I just said. Good.
Well, no, just your links, just your link.
Thank you for listening to the Live and Create podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe and leave a comment or a review.
The Live and Create podcast.